Hare Deva Mai Subhadra. Jaya Srinathji Jaya Bala Gopal Jaya Srinathji Jaya Giri Govardhan. Jaya Gauranita 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Nam Sankirtana ki Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Jai. Hare Krishna, devotees. So welcome to this discussion we'll have today on Sri Chaitanya Caritamrita. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, devotees. So today we'll be discussing continuation of chapter 17 from Madhya Lila. The chapter is entitled The Lord Travels to Vrindavan. We'll cover up to verse number 145, and we'll begin around verse 55 or 60, somewhere in that range. So we'll cover almost 100 verses, but we're just going to cover a summary. So last time we discussed three topics. We talked about Raghunath Das Goswami and how he had a deep desire to be in association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised that let Krishna's plan unfold. Krishna has a perfect plan. It can never be checked, actually. And so in understanding that, he told Raghunath Goswami, just do your service, can remain in Krishna consciousness. And Krishna will arrange for you to join me in Jagannath Puri. And it's very instructive for us, because when we do our services, sometimes we become so attached to the result that we experience these ups and downs in devotional service. But in reality, if the mood is situated in the service, then where is the scope for disappointment? Because our enjoyment in bhakti is the rendering of service, not the result. The result is Krishna's. So by taking shelter of Krishna's plan, one can obtain great steadiness, confidence, and consistency in experience of devotional service. As soon as we experience some, maybe unpleasant or not perfect feelings, we can dissect and analyze. Is there some attachment to the result? Why is it that I'm not experiencing the mood that I am desiring, that I hear so much about? And often it relates to this not letting Krishna's plan play out. And we talked about many different examples of that. We also talked about Rupa and Sanatana Goswami and their stone-melting humility. How they had great humility to the point that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was recalling how he had to ask them to stop expressing themselves because it was breaking Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's heart. And we said that what is humility? Humility is just having an accurate understanding of who we are. That we are a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. We are a tiny spark, but we are qualitatively one with Krishna. So we are tiny and spark. And one who knows that, yes, their potency, their ability, whatever they have, it is there only because they are connected to Krishna. Everything one gets is from the mercy of Krishna. So whatever one may be able to accomplish, one remains humble, knowing who they are. One doesn't have to endeavor to be humble. One is naturally humbly knowing, I am just a tiny spark. Yet, connected to Krishna, great things can happen. So one doesn't use the humility as a reason to be lazy or to just think, I can't do anything. I'm incapable. Yes, we are incapable. But with the power of Krishna, with the mercy of Krishna, extraordinary things can happen. As we discussed several sessions ago, as Srila Prabhupada said, even excelling in the preaching of Lord Nityananda, but knowing where that potency comes from. So we talked about this great mood of humility. And then we talked a little bit about the Jharkhand forest, and we specifically talked about following versus imitating. It is not recommended that we try to imitate Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and go preach to tigers and lions. We may not have the same effect. Paramatma in the heart of the lions is calming their mood in the midst of a Mahabhagat. But in the midst of, at least myself, not so lucky. But we can follow the mood, which is that we cannot go out and preach to lions, but at least let's go out and preach to our neighbors, those who may be willing to hear, those who may be interested in understanding this science of self-realization and devotional service. So this, following is following in the mood. Raghunath Das Goswami was honoring the prasadam that even the cows would not honor. Well, we cannot imitate such activity, but we can follow the mood of being, respectful to all prasad and enjoying and honoring all of Krishna's mercy, and not maybe being so selective as we sometimes do. And so, like this way, we don't imitate the activities, but we follow their mood. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is showing us throughout this Chaitanya Caritamrita the most perfect mood to follow in devotional service. That is why he came. He came to show exactly how one can make perfection in bhakti. So, in these chapters, as we read, we see so many wonderful examples. And today, I thought we could discuss the service being rendered by Balabhadra Bhattacharya. Balabhadra Bhattacharya is accompanying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on his travels to Vrindavan, and he is rendering great service. So we can discuss a little bit about his mood of service and how he is serving, and maybe we can become inspired to follow in his footsteps. And then we'll discuss Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's arrival in Kashi. And Kashi being the center of this Mayavad philosophy. Much discussion takes place during this section of Chaitanya Caritamrita about the Mayavadi philosophy. And Tapanishka and Chandrasekhar are lamenting at the lack of practice of devotional service, and so many discussions take place. So we'll discuss a little bit about this Mayavadi philosophy in the conclusion of this section. So we'll read today two verses in purports, and that focus on the second discussion topic, and then we'll rewind to the discussion of Balabhadra Bhattacharya. So these are two verses from this section around the Mayavadi philosophy. So this is text number 103. Emate pratigana karene vachana sanyastra sangha bhayana manenena nimmatrena. Every day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refused their invitations because he feared associating with Mayavadi sannyasis. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. A Vaishnava sannyasi never accepts an invitation from a party who considers Mayavadi sannyasis and Vaishnava sannyasis to be one and the same. In other words, Vaishnava sannyasis do not at all like to associate with Mayavadi sannyasis, to say nothing of eating with them. This principle must be followed by the sannyasis of Krishna conscious movement. That is the instruction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu given by his personal behavior. So we'll discuss a little bit later in this discussion why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says he feared associating. He says, Sangha Bhyaya. Why he feared. Okay. So then we'll read now verse 145. I'll just read the translation and purport in the interest of time. This is the last of this verse of this section. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking here. I have brought a heavy load to sell in this city. To take it back again is a very difficult job. Therefore, if I get but a fraction of the price, I shall sell it here in the city of Kashi. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was selling the transcendental holy name of the Lord, but Kashi was a city of Mayavadis, impersonalists, and such people will never chant the holy names of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Consequently, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was feeling disappointed. How could he teach the Mayavadis the importance of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra? The attraction for chanting the holy name of the Lord belongs absolutely to pure devotees, and there was no possibility of finding pure devotees at Kashi. Consequently, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's commodity was certainly very heavy. The Lord therefore suggested that even if there was no pure devotee in Kashi, if someone was a little inclined to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, he would deliver this big load, although the proper price was not paid. Actually, we experienced this when we came to preach the Hare Krishna movement in the West. When we came to New York in 1965, we never expected that the Hare Krishna Mahamantra would be accepted in this country. Nonetheless, we invited people to our storefront to join in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And the Lord's holy name is so attractive that simply by coming to our storefront in New York, fortunate young people became Krishna conscious. Although this mission was started with insignificant capital, it is now growing nicely. The spreading of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in the West has become successful because the young people were not offenders. The youth who joined this movement were not very advanced as far as purity is concerned, nor were they very well educated in Vedic knowledge. But because they were not offenders, they could accept the importance of the Hare Krishna movement. We are now very happy to see that this movement is advancing more and more in the Western countries. We therefore conclude that so-called lechas and yavanas of the Western countries are more purified than offensive Mayavadis or atheistic impersonalists. Om Jnana Vidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dalati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sarvanatam Vitam Tam Sujivam Sarvetam Savadutam Parijanasahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishnavanostute Devi Pranami Hari Priye Vajakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyo Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhuteshmane Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishya Shunyavadi Pasha Jadeshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So let us begin today's discussion talking about the great service of Balabhadra Bhattacharya. So, Balabhadra Bhattacharya is rendering incredible service. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to go to Vrindavan, as we know, and his attempts have been tested. His perseverance and determination is being tested. But on his last attempt, he was being followed by millions and millions of people. And so it became very difficult and inappropriate for him to enter Vrindavan Dham with such a following. And so he was thinking and lamenting how to go and visit Vrindavan without drawing these crowds. He was so attractive and so magnanimous. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to take then the inner roads through the forest and jungle, because there the public would not be so present. So them taking the main roads, which is certainly the easier and more comfortable path, he chose not to take. And so in doing so, he was requested by the devotees of Jagannath Puri to take with him some help. And Balabhadra Bhattacharya is one of the brahmanas who is serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so nicely. And we see how he was serving, in verses 61, 62, 63, 64, so with such intelligence. They were begging from village to village. But Balabhadra Bhattacharya also, he would keep 2 to 4 days worth of stock of grains with him at all times, just in case they did not make it to some place where they would see somebody. Right? Again, put it in context, we're traveling now in a very remote area. And so with good intelligence, he was keeping a stockpile. But that stockpile, you can imagine, was not so easy. Carrying 2 to 4 days worth of grains is difficult. It's easier if you're just going village to village and begging some grains. But he was willing to endure that difficulty to make sure that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would have some prasadam to honor, no matter where they were, even in the middle of the forest. And he would go and find different fruits and vegetables. And Nitya Krishna is saying that the Lord was very happy to eat these forest vegetables. And actually he was happier in the solitary area of the forest. But he was happier because Balabhadra Bhattacharya was rendering amazing service. And one of the things that I noted in verse 65, I'll just read the verse. It says, Balabhadra Bhattacharya was so affectionate to the Lord that he was rendering service just like a menial servant. His assistant Brahmana carried the water pot and garments. So he was rendering menial service. And what we see is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in verse 76, explains that how he was so happy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Balabhadra and told him, "It is only by your kindness that I am so happy." He says that I was going to Vrindavan with a big crowd, but through the mouth of Sanatan, Krishna taught me a lesson. Thus, by making some impediment, he has brought me on a path through the forest to Vrindavan. But he is so kind that he has brought Balabhadra Bhattacharya. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that this difficult journey has been made very easy by the great service of Balabhadra Bhattacharya. And we see that he was willing to do even menial service. In the temple, we see that this menial service is actually most pleasing to Krishna. Because we know if we were having some big party at our house, and our friends have come and they're helping us in hosting the party. And at the end of the party, there are some easier services to do, maybe folding some chairs, but there are some more menial services, cleaning the bathrooms, taking out the garbage, maybe mopping the floors. Well, when someone was willing to do even that most menial service, how would our mood would be? We'd be very pleased and very happy. So like that, Krishna, when he sees, everyone is interested and willing to do the service of performing arti or singing the kirtan or cooking for him. But only those who really love Krishna would be willing to clean the toilets and sweep the floor and wash the pots and pick up the trash. Because it takes someone who really loves Krishna to be able to do that. But Krishna becomes so pleased by this menial service. Because he knows, wow, my devotee must love me so much that he is even willing to do the lower services. Wow. And Krishna then, his love for that devotee grows even more. And that reciprocal relationship becomes so sweet. So when we actually seek out doing some menial service, it actually is very pleasing to Krishna. Because Krishna knows, now, wow, my devotee must really love me. Because he's performing even this not so glamorous service. And it's really helpful for our consciousness. Particularly as we continue to progress in devotional service. Sometimes, it's easy to do menial service early on in our practice of devotional service. But as we progress, we think, oh, now I'm doing, the higher service. There is no higher service. The higher or lower is based on the consciousness of our heart. And as we progress in devotional service, holding on to some menial service is very fulfilling for us. It helps us stay grounded. It helps us appreciate the opportunity to serve. And finally, we know it is most pleasing to Krishna. Because everyone is willing to do some of the other services. But only those that really love Krishna. So, one friend always reminded me, when we go to the temple, do some menial service. Pick up one piece of trash. Clean something. Move one pair of shoes out of place. Do something menial service. It's a nice reminder, and it's a way to really endear ourselves to Krishna. As we see in Balabhadra Bhattacharya's menial service was very pleasing to Krishna. And it was also his very intelligent service. He was anticipating what is the needs, what is the opportunity. When we do service to Krishna, we do service to devotees. We should think about it with empathy. Empathy means I put myself in that person's shoes and anticipate what is their need. How would they like to be served? Right? Because the recipient, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was not going to demand chapatis, and he was going to, even fruits or just berries and dried roots would come. He would express happiness. But Balabhadra Bhattacharya wasn't thinking, oh Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what do you want? He was anticipating and thinking, what would he like? And so his service was beyond just a basic level of, okay, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants roots and berries, I'll go get roots and berries. But instead, he put himself in thinking, what would he like? And there he went out and took the extra effort to render service. And so this mood with empathy, putting ourselves in their shoes, is very, very powerful. When we serve the deities, what would make them happy? I'm serving them, what is pleasing to them. Not is what is convenient to me, but what is convenient to them. How is it that they would like to be dressed? Or how is it that they would like to be sung for? Or what is it that they would like to eat if we're cooking for the deities? And we think about it in that perspective. It's very, very nice. And it puts us in this mood. And we see by this example of Balabhadra Bhattacharya, not only doing what he was asked, but also anticipating and thinking and rendering beautiful service. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, showed his gratitude, and he showed that how pleased he was. He says that it is only by your kindness that I am now so happy. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaking to Balabhadra Bhattacharya. He's saying it's only by your kindness, because you have rendered service in this very difficult journey through the dense forest. You have made me happy. And so you can see the reciprocation. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Balabhadra Acharya, embraced him, and then expressed his gratitude. And so how to get the embrace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is rendering service in this mood of intelligence, with empathy, thinking what is going to be needed, and willing to do even the most menial service. So these three aspects that Balabhadra Bhattacharya performed, and the result was this. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Balabhadra Bhattacharya, it is because of you I am so happy, and embraced him, how did Balabhadra Bhattacharya respond? We see in the 77th verse. He says, my dear Lord, you are Krishna himself. Therefore, you are merciful. I am a fallen living entity, but you have bestowed great favor upon me. And then he says in the 80th verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the form of Sachidananda Vigraha, transcendental bliss, knowledge, and eternity, I offer my respectful obeisances to him, who turns the dumb into eloquent speakers and enables the lame to cross mountains. Such is the mercy of the Lord. This very famous verse, Mukham Karoti Vachalam, that he's saying, Balabhadra Bhattacharya is saying, Krishna, you are the one that can make the lame cross the mountains. You are the one who can make the dumb speak. Whatever service I am doing, it is only you that are enabling. So he did not become proud or think, wow, yes, I am doing such a nice service. He again gave the credit back to Krishna, back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is the mood of the devotee, the humility we talked about last time. When something great happens in service, okay, but who is enabling it? Who is enabling the lame to cross mountains or the dumb to speak eloquently? It is only Krishna's mercy. And so the devotee carries this mood with them, and they perform wonderful, wonderful service. So this service performed by Balabhadra Bhattacharya is very inspiring, and we can try to bring about this practical mood, searching out menial service, doing service thinking about the recipient and what would please them, not what we want to do, and using our intelligence, willing to endure some difficulties, even carrying 2 to 4 days of grains for the Supreme Lord. So that was, I thought, a nice example for us to follow. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is traversing through this forest. He has left the Jharkhand forest, or is, kind of exiting, I should say, and he is now going to reach the town of Kashi. And we read the verse 103 and 145 describing this town of Kashi. Not such the holy Dham where the prevalent practice of devotional service is taking place yet, because as we know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on his return from Vrindavan is going to revisit Kashi, and something miraculous is going to happen. But let's see what's taking place there. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu approached the outskirts, Tapan Mishra saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and became very ecstatic and offered obeisances and clasped his feet to his head, and was very pleased to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu coming and seeing this. And he hosted Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his home, invited him to take lunch, and served him very nicely. And here again we see Tapan Mishra. When he brought Chaitanya Mahaprabhu into his house, he also served Balabhadra Bhattacharya very nicely. He was not thinking, oh, I'm only going to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and ignore his very dear servant. Sometimes, when senior devotees come and they come with other devotees, we create hierarchies in our mind. But Tapan Mishra, you can see, is serving both Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Balabhadra Bhattacharya very, very nicely. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami speaks about in the verses 89. So, Tapan Mishra in verse 90, we see that he had a son named Raghu. So actually, Tapan Mishra is the father of Raghunath Bhatt Goswami. So we know one of the great Goswamis who was an ardent chanter of the holy names and reciter and student of Srimad Bhagavatam, who performed great service in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. His father is this Tapan Mishra, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed in Anand Prashadam for many, many, many days. So now let us discuss this topic of this Mayavadi philosophy. We see Srila Prabhupada in purport in Bhagavad Gita, particularly in chapter 2, speak very strongly about this Mayavadi philosophy and counters many of the points and positions and angles of vision. And he speaks very strongly about that. And sometimes we wonder, why Srila Prabhupada is speaking so strongly about this Mayavadi philosophy. And we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities here. So let us discuss a little bit about this philosophy and why it's so dangerous for us and how one should approach it or deal with it, and what some of the opportunities are for the not so atheistic or offensive impersonalists. Okay, so the Mayavadi philosophies, they claim to be studying Vedanta. Vedanta means the ultimate knowledge or the essence of all knowledge. Right? The Vedanta sutras contain the aphorisms of all of the Vedas, kind of the essence. And so there is, there's this impersonal Vedanta and there's a personal Vedanta. And we know we have many Vaishnava commentaries on the Vedantas, Srimad Bhagavatam being a foremost commentary on the Vedanta Sutras as authorized by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have Govinda Bhashya by Sri Baladev Vidabhushan. We have the Sri Bhashya by Ramanujacharya and others. Madhvacharya has his commentary. And so like that, we have many Vaishnava commentaries on Vedanta. And we also have the impersonal commentary by Sripad Shankaracharya, the Shariraka Bhashya. So we have the impersonal Vedanta and the personal. Now, the impersonal idea, this Mayavadi philosophy, the core of this Mayavadi philosophy that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so strongly and vehemently protecting against are the offensive impersonalists. Very important, the offensive impersonalists. And these offensive impersonalists, why they are offensive, so let us discuss why it is so offensive. So the Mayavadi philosophies that were being discussed here, they deny that Krishna is a person. So they deny the form of the Lord. They say he doesn't exist. And thus it is very atheistic. They say that the form, when Krishna comes and speaks the Bhagavad Gita, they'll refer to Bhagavad Gita. But they'll say that Krishna who is speaking Bhagavad Gita, that form is Maya. It is illusion. It is only temporary. When he goes back, he blends into the Brahman, this absolute Brahman. So they say the absolute truth is formless. There is no Krishna. So then there is no Golaka Vrindavan. There are no eternal pastimes with Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. There are no pastimes with the cowherd boys. There is no Lord Balaram. There is no eternal, pastimes with the gopis. There is no Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha. There is no, Jaya and Vijaya serving as gatekeepers. There is no, all these different paths. They say none of that exists. Because the only thing that exists in their world, in their mind, importantly in their mind, not by Shastra, is impersonal. Just effulgence. There is no form. There is no variety, according to their philosophy. So this creates, and what they say for themselves is that the living entity in the material world is falsely separated. But when it liberates, goes back, it again reconnects and merges into the original Brahman. So they don't understand that Krishna says very clearly in Bhagavad Gita, Mavaivam Sho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha. He says right in Bhagavad Gita that the Jiva is my eternal fragmental part, not temporary. He says Sanatana. It is my eternal. Krishna says in the 2nd chapter, 12th verse, right? Never is there a time that I did not exist, nor you. Well, if Krishna is speaking to Arjuna and saying, never was there a time we did not exist, nor you, nor in the future shall we cease to be, then how that can support that in the spiritual world there is no individuality. Right? So Shastra very clearly explains, in very layman's terms, this philosophy.
So why that this philosophy is being propagated? Because there is a motive for the Mayavadis. The Mayavadis have a motive that they want to become God. So their only way to substantiate such a position is to say that no, we'll merge into God. There is no individual God because you can't be somebody who's somebody else. So in order for it to facilitate that, it becomes the basis of the philosophy. And so it's very dangerous because it is not just that they don't believe or don't know about, they actually say, no, Krishna doesn't exist. They've so-called studied Vedanta, but they have completely misunderstood. Because Krishna has very clearly said in Bhagavad Gita, Vedaischa Savar, Aham Eva Vedya. Of all the Vedas, Aham, I am to be known. How, in order to say I, it means a person. The sun doesn't claim I with its sun rays. No, that is impersonal. The sun rays are impersonal. But when as soon as they say I am to be known, so again, repeatedly throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is establishing himself as a supreme person. The whole Sri Ishopanishad is a shastra to establish. But the Mayavadi philosophy is purporting this atheistic philosophy to satisfy their desire to try to become God. So it is very, very dangerous. And it is not based on any shastric principle. But what they do is they take the Vedanta and they twist it. Through word jugglery. And contort the real meaning. And we saw that in the interaction between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. 7 days Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya spoke, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I understood nothing because you have completely contorted the meaning of Vedanta. And then he explained in the real meaning. So, this important, even the founder, this Sripad Shankaracharya, he accepted the personal feature of the Lord. So he was explaining this philosophy to bring those who are following this is a sequential step towards devotional service after Lord Buddha had to stop the animal sacrifices, completely banned the Vedas. And so Sripad Shankaracharya is coming to bring people one step closer by explaining, okay, just think about the Supreme Lord in this impersonal feature. But he never denied the existence of Krishna as a person. And thus at the end of his commentary, he says, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. Chant Krishna, chant Krishna. Okay? So, but his followers have misconstrued the philosophy to satisfy an egotistical desire to become God. And so thus, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this verse 103, he says, he feared associating with Mayavadi sannyasis. It's a very important word. Sangha bhaya. Fear. Not casual. I avoid them. He wanted nothing to do with them. And this is very instructive for us. We should also fear associating with this philosophy. We should have great fear. Why? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has explained already in Madhya Lila, in the 6th chapter. He says, Mayavadi Bhashya Sunile Haya Sarva Nasha. This Mayavadi Bhashya, this commentary from the Mayavadis. Shunile Haya. One hears this philosophy. Sarva Nasha. Everything is spoiled. Everything. Sarva. Not mostly. Not some damage. Everything. So one's entire endeavor in devotional service can become completely spoiled with a moment's association with this philosophy. So sometimes we ask, oh, what's the harm? What's the harm? This is the harm. This, if one hears this commentary, everything is spoiled, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking. So there's for good reason he is establishing this point of fear, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't want anyone to miss out on the great nectar of devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada, explains that when we hear this commentary, it's dangerous because it can create the feeling in the living entity, that I can become Krishna. And that mood of surrender and that mood of service, the mood of love, that never manifests. It ruins everything. Our ego enjoys to hear, I can become God. And then everything we are working to do to try to become Trunadapi Sunichena Karodapi Shishna Manina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari becomes spoiled. And thus, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu uses the word, he feared associating. And so we should carry with us this healthy, and I emphasize the word healthy, amount of fear and caution. And Srila Prabhupada, when he took the disciples to Vrindavan for the very first time, he warned very strongly, do not hear from anybody. Why he warned that way? Some might think, Srila Prabhupada was being, he was envious of others. He didn't want anybody else to speak to his disciples. Or, he was, guarding them. Why he was, no. Because he wanted to protect their bhakti. Because they, in their immature state, would not know who is a Mayavadi and who is not. Just like in a public place, when we are with our children, we don't let them associate with anybody. Why? Out of protection. It is not that everybody is bad, but because you don't know for sure, you take the conservative approach. And you don't let them speak to anybody. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada guided us. Don't hear from anyone. Not that everybody else has got it wrong. No, that was not Srila Prabhupada's point. But because we may not be so mature to know, the safe and conservative approach is to hear from our Guru Parampara. Again, Srila Prabhupada did not claim an exclusive claim to Vaishnava philosophy. But he was presenting everything as it is in this way. And so he wanted to protect all of us. And because we may not be so mature to know, just like we do with our children, Srila Prabhupada guided us to be very careful. Because the consequences are very severe. It can spoil everything. These aren't small consequences. They are significant. And unfortunately, we've seen this circumstance take place even in very recent times. This mood of devotion can be completely wiped out by the smallest of tinge. And so Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are guiding us out of their love for us. Sometimes we don't like to hear this, don't go and look outside. But it is for our only benefit. This sarva nasha, to avoid having everything spoiled. Just a little bit, just as if I have a big pot of sweet rice that is perfectly cooked, perfectly sweet, and perfectly thick. The whole pot is ruined if one drop of poison enters that pot. You cannot just say, I'll just take that poison out. With one drop of poison, the whole pot is ruined. Like that, this philosophy is very, very dangerous for us. So we learn from this, and we keep respectful distance. We don't go out and criticize, we don't go and denigrate, we just keep distance, because we don't know. So this pastime continues with his visits in Kashi, where one Brahmana is meeting Prakashananda Saraswati. Prakashananda Saraswati is the leader of the Mayavadi sannyasis in Kashi. And this Brahmana is relating the glories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and how extraordinary he is, and how beautiful and how ecstatic he is. And Prakashananda Saraswati is becoming very envious. This is the nature of an envious heart. When we hear the glories of someone else, we become very frustrated. And so Prakashananda Saraswati begins to criticize Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, calls him a pretender, says these mood of ecstasy, they're all pretenders. And of course, Srila Rupa Goswami, Nectar of Devotion, has given us very precise symptoms of Bhava Bhakti that cannot be fake. Yes, one can shed tears, but we don't know if those are real tears or not. One can pretend to shiver in ecstasy, but we don't know if they're real or not. But the Bhava Bhakti symptoms that Srila Rupa Goswami explained to us are very exacting. How one is constantly engaged in devotional service. One perseveres through difficulty. One is detached from all material engagements. One has no pride. They have hope against hope, intense eagerness to serve, great attachment to the holy names, great attachment to describing the qualities of the Lord, attachment to living in the Dham. These things cannot be fake. So while Prakashananda Saraswati calls Chaitanya Mahaprabhu a pretender, he could not be more wrong, of course, in this. And in verses 117 to 121, he goes on to continue to criticize Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by calling him, a magician and a sentimentalist, and how he had brainwashed Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And like this very offensive way he took to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in the end, we see that he was not able to even chant the holy names of Krishna. The Mayavadis, being great offenders, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, because the Brahmana asked, why Prakashananda Saraswati could not say Krishna Chaitanya? He could only say Chaitanya, 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 but he could not say Krishna Chaitanya. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replies, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, the Mayavadi impersonalists are great offenders unto Lord Krishna, and therefore they simply utter the words Brahman, Atma, and Chaitanya. So we see they cannot utter even the holy names of the Lord, because they are offenders unto Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is identical with his holy names. The holy name Krishna does not manifest in their mouths. Actually, we should be very grateful that somehow we have been blessed by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, that we can even chant the names of Krishna. Because we can see, the Mayavadis, they cannot even chant the name of Krishna. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes on to explain how there is no difference between Krishna and his holy names. And he goes on to glorify, I wanted to read verse 133, just to hear how powerful are the holy names. The holy name of Krishna is transcendently blissful. It bestows all spiritual benedictions, for it is Krishna himself, the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna's name is complete, and it is the form of all transcendental mellows. It is not a material name under any condition, and it is no less powerful than Krishna himself. Since Krishna's name is not contaminated by material qualities, there is no question of it being involved with Maya. Krishna's name is always liberated and spiritual. It is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. This is because the name of Krishna and Krishna himself are identical. We say the fifth offense of chanting the holy names is to consider the glories of chanting the holy names to be imagination. Here we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was quoting a verse from Padma Purana, where the holy name of Krishna is transcendently blissful. It bestows all spiritual benedictions. Sometimes we wonder, I am chanting, but what else should I do? What else should I do? It bestows all spiritual benedictions. But then this verse from Padma Puran explains why. For it is Krishna himself. The names are Krishna himself, who is the reservoir of all pleasures. The holy names contain all pleasure. All pleasure. Whatever we see in this material world that we deem or think to give us pleasure, it actually is contained in his pure, in unlimited form in his holy names. This is the potency of the holy names. Krishna's name is complete. Means there is nothing missing from Krishna's name. And it is the form of all transcendental mellows. Again, all the sweet tastes, they are residing within the holy names. So we see the potency of this very, very powerful verse of the holy names. So, this impersonalist philosophy is very dangerous. But then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after speaking to this Brahmana, gives us a glimmer of when actually though someone can be saved. So he begins to speak. This is the 137th verse. He says, the mellows of Lord Krishna's pastimes, which are full of bliss, attract the jnani from the pleasure of Brahman realization and conquer him. So what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying is that there are innocent impersonalists. There are impersonalists who don't know, there is something beyond the Brahman effulgence. Those innocent impersonalists, those jnanis, they can become attracted and become full of bliss by Krishna's pastimes. So the Mayavadis who say, no, Krishna doesn't exist, they are the devout atheists. But there are some who say, I don't know. I'm not sure. For them, there is still hope to progress. There is still hope. Because they are now outrightly saying Krishna does not exist. They're saying, I don't know. Is there a person? Is there a form? What is it like? Show me. Prove it to me. So there is still hope for that person. And then what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does, he proves it. And what he does, he relates two examples. And the first example is given in verse 138, where he gives the example of Shukadev Goswami. Shukadev Goswami himself was tinged with this impersonalist philosophy. But by the mercy of his father and the pastimes of Krishna, he became the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. This verse reads, this is from the 12th canto, spoken by Sutta Goswami. Let me offer my respectful obeisance unto my spiritual master, the son of Vyasadeva, Shukadev Goswami. It is he who defeats all inauspicious things within the universe. Although in the beginning he was absorbed in the happiness of Brahman realization and was living in a secluded place, giving up all their types of consciousness, he became attracted by the most melodious pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna. He therefore mercifully spoke the supreme Purana known as Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the bright light of the absolute truth and which describes the activities of Lord Krishna. So here we see, yes, someone may be attracted to the impersonal Brahman, but if they are not offensive, they are not offenders to Krishna, then they can become attracted to by the pastimes of Krishna. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes this verse to give an example. And then he gives another example. And what example is that? The example of the four Kumaras. And he says the four Kumaras were also attracted to this impersonal conception. But by smelling the tulasi leaves from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, they became pure devotees. So much so, they became the founders of one of the Vaishnava Sampradayas, the Kumar Sampradaya. But their initial inclination was of impersonal. So we must, be careful that when we talk about impersonalism, there are innocent impersonalists who are not offenders. And for them, there is possibility, by hearing about Krishna's pastimes and names, to become elevated to the point of great devotees, like Shukadev Goswami, like the four Kumaras. And how far they were elevated? One to speak the Mahapurana, and the other to be the inaugurator of a great Vaishnava Sampradaya. So we see the potency of Krishna's names and pastimes. If one is not yet fully informed, they can come to the complete realization of the Supreme Lord. Because we know Krishna is known completely in his Bhagavan, his personal realization. So, of course, now, though this is a very treacherous condition in Kashi, and very dangerous, we know, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returns from going to Vrindavan, he is going to come back to Kashi, and there he is going to deliver Prakashananda Saraswati, the one who is criticizing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so much, he is going to deliver him. And through a very humble approach, he is going to convert him to a transcendental chanter of the holy names. And this is the unlimited mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That even the offensive, great offender, Prakashananda Saraswati, is going to be transformed. This pastime was explained already earlier in Chaitanya Caritamrita, in Adi Leela, but in sequence, in time sequence, it's going to happen on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's return to Kashi, where he'll spend 1 month instructing Sanatana Goswami on the aspects of devotional service, and we'll have the great fortune to read about those instructions in chapter 19 and chapter 20. Very wonderful chapters coming up in this Madhya Leela about the deep instructions about the inner secrets of devotional service. And that conversation takes place in Kashi after he returns from Sri Vrindavan. So that is a little bit here today on chapter 17, the great service of Balabhadra Bhattacharya, showing great intelligence, rendering very menial service in a mood of empathy, thinking what Krishna would want, and doing so received the great blessings and made Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's journey through the difficult forest very easy and made him very happy. And we see the Mayavadi philosophy, this denial of Krishna as the Supreme Lord, as a Supreme Person, being very offensive and very dangerous. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that one should be fearful of such association because it can sarvanasha, spoil everything that we've acquired, and that mood of devotion will not come due to the ego desire to try to become the Lord. So very wonderful instructions we have in chapter 17. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anantakoti Vaishnavinda ki.
Yeah.
Any comments, discussion? Appreciate to hear anyone else's realizations from this section of our reading. Any questions, corrections? Please share.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dr. Ram,
Hare Krishna.
and Dr. Ram to all the simple devotees as well. Prabhu, very powerful. In fact, when I'm listening to it, maybe the first time. And there are so many messages that come across that we can use in our day-to-day life, whether it be personal or professional. There's so many messages in this 1 hour, and very so simply put by you, Prabhu. I really thank you very much. It was just a comment, no questions, Prabhu. Just learning. I was noting down and I'm like, okay, this is one take-home point. No, there's another, and there's another, and then there's another. I'm like, okay. So, thank you, Prabhu. Putting it so simply, Prabhu.
It is the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Everything he does, all his devotees do, are wonderful examples for us to try to apply. So thank you for taking something home.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for the final lecture. One question, Prabhuji, regarding the Mayavadi philosophy. If that still exists, is there any example just to know, like, not to hear their, not to do that, not to follow that? Is there any examples or any exists? No?
Well, here's the bad news. I would say, but if you analyze, and most of the spiritual philosophy out there is tinged with this Mayavadi philosophy. Unfortunately. It is very prevalent, actually. Very prevalent. The idea, because one, it satisfies one's ego, and it's very sweet to hear, oh, you can become God. So one can gain many, many followers that way. And one can gain much wealth and much facilities. So most of the philosophy that's being propagated, unfortunately, is tinged sometimes very much, sometimes very subtly with this impersonalist philosophy. And the danger of it is, see, if a robber comes to your house, knocks on your door and says, hey, I'm here to rob your home, don't unlock the door. It's very easy to protect against that danger. But the danger with this is it's very subtle. They'll speak Krishna Katha. That's the craziness of this. They'll speak Krishna Katha. They'll speak all kinds of from Bhagavad Gita. They'll speak Ram Katha. They'll speak all this. But in the end, they'll speak about impersonalism. And that's the real danger. And that's why Srila Prabhupada warned that don't hear from anybody. Again, it wasn't out of envy. It wasn't out of, I don't trust anybody else or I'm better than anybody else. No, it was out of protection. Because it's very hard for us to decipher and know. So when something is dangerous, we err on the side of caution. Right? That is a common plan we use. We want to err on the side of caution. So the err on the side of caution, we follow the teachings. And one very practical example, there are so many bhajans out there and so many different songs. But Srila Prabhupada was very adamant that we only sing the Mahamantra and bhajans from our Vaishnava Acharyas. Why? Because some of the other bhajans, they may on surface look very nice, but we don't know. We may not know the intricacies of them. We may not be so expert. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself followed this. Whenever somebody wanted to recite some verse or poem or song for him, first Swarup Damodar would review it, analyze it, and validate it. Then it would be allowed to be presented. Because a lot of it has sometimes intentional, sometimes unintentional misdirections. So what we are advised to do is just be very, very careful and very cautious because much of that, but again, I want to be very careful also. It does not mean that all other philosophy is impersonalist. That is not the case. There are other very bona fide Vaishnava sampradayas and philosophies. But this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, we know, he is Mahavadhanaya. He is the most merciful. And so, following in his Guru Sampradaya, we also receive the most merciful love of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to make progress in devotional service. So in that regard, actually there is no need to look anywhere else. Because everything is contained. Krishna himself has established this sampradaya. He himself, in the mood of a devotee, has come and established this complete. He has left nothing out. So in that regard, we also have no need to look elsewhere. Just read Chaitanya Caritamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Nectar Devotion, Nectar. There's so many wonderful Vaishnava literatures we have, and we can study until the end of this life and many, many years beyond that. So that is what is recommended for us, because yes, it is very prevalent still today.
Thank you, Guruji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So one more question. So if one day we mingle with the people, we can recognize who are following the Mayavadi philosophy, Prabhuji?
It's sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. I have seen people, unfortunately, with my own eyes, become completely bewildered and not even recognize it. So it's not so sure. So, what we do, again, we want to make sure we maintain this principle of respectful distance. Right? When a snake is in the garden, we don't have to give it any trouble, but we keep distance. We respect its presence there, but we keep distance. So it's the same thing. With other philosophies, other things, we don't know, we don't become disrespectful. Oh, you're in a Mayavad philosophy? No. That is not, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said in this section, I didn't say it, but when people would invite him for lunch, he didn't say, no, I'm not coming to your house, you're an impersonalist. He said, I'm sorry, I'm previously engaged. I already have a meeting. Right? So he did not go out and speak, I would never come to your house because you're an impersonalist. Right? So this principle of respectful distance was explained. And Srila Prabhupada did this as well. So that is our mood. And again, if we're not sure, we don't need to get into so deep dialogue and on philosophy. If they have some philosophy, that's what they believe, okay, let them believe. I have, what I understand. It is not our position if we're not so foundationally strong to convince them, then better, humble, and move on.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, sir.
Hare Krishna. Because we have to have practical. We may have close relationships with people who are maybe following this. We don't want to become disrespectful. Okay? So we shouldn't become disrespectful.
Yeah, that's what we are so new to be cautious. So that's why we are keep repeating the same question again.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, you can be respectful. Just don't open your heart to it, right? So we don't look to inquire or learn because it's very dangerous. But respectful distance is always the principle. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna to many Dhanavad Pranam always. Very nice class, so thank you so much. Brings up and there's so many lessons here. My question is for Mayavadi philosophy which you're talking about, there are two kinds of Mayavadi, as I understand, maybe if I'm wrong. You said the ones who are great offenders of Krishna, who know that the Krishna exists, but at the same time they deny it and they quoting from Bhagavad Gita and all that. And then there are ones who are ignorant of Krishna. So would that mean that so first of all, the ones who are ignorant of Krishna, so how come they are Mayavadis? Because that means
That
means that even I was not aware that Krishna is the supreme personality in the beginning. He become into that. So will that be considered?
No. So a Mayavadi, specifically, why it's called Mayavadi? Because they believe the form of Krishna is Maya. It is illusion. So when they specifically say when Krishna comes to the material world, he assumes a body. And that is it is illusion, it's not real. So that is Mayavadi. The innocent impersonalists are not Mayavadis because they don't say that Krishna's form is Maya. They don't know about Krishna's form. So they have only understood the Lord to be so far in their understanding impersonal. So they're not Mayavadis. They're just impersonalists. They don't know that there's something beyond the Brahman effulgence. That Krishna's form is the source of that effulgence. As Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, as we see in Shri Upanishad. Right? So that is the innocent, if we will, or ignorant impersonalist. The Mayavadis claim knowledge. They use Shastra and twist it to try to explain something that is wrong. And that is why it's so offensive. Right? If I just don't know, then there's no offense. I don't know. So Krishna has a very kind heart. Because you think, okay, if you don't know, and you come to know about my sweet names and pastimes, oh, Krishna has a form, he has pastime, he has activity. There's variety in the spiritual world? That's what wow. Okay, one can progress, like Shukadeva Goswami, like the four Kumaras, right? So they are not Mayavadis. Mayavadis is, I specifically declare Krishna's form is Maya. So that's the distinction. So they're not, there are what we call innocent impersonalists who just know up to that level. We know there are 3 stages of realizing Krishna. There's Brahman realization, then Paramatma realization. From Paramatma to Bhagavan realization. Right? So that's different because now we are in different grades of realization. But the Mayavadi says there is nothing beyond impersonal. They're not saying I don't know if there's anything. They're saying there isn't. That's the difference. Is that clear?
Yeah, actually this clarified a lot. Actually in our morning meetings we were having a Okay. So the Mayavadi is only one category. There's no other category, correct?
Correct.
So whoever is a Mayavad is one who is offensive to Krishna in the sense of way you mentioned, correct? So there's only one category of Mayavad, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and specifically denying the existence of Krishna as a person. That's the Maya. You have to deny the existence. Not I don't know. No, he doesn't exist. His form is illusion. That's Maya.
And the second one, as you mentioned, the innocent impersonation, that I understood. Then in the Bhagavad Gita, when we are doing in parallel in the morning reading, so there we came across the sannyasis who are pretenders. Now, what category do they belong to? So now, like, we have this, we have the two, and then these are the pretenders who have the taste for something, but then they are, that in the outside, outwardly, they're showing that they are, renunciated everything, but at least the taste of that thing still meditate upon those things which they are not supposed to.
Yeah.
So, can we categorize, is it a different kind of people, or should we put it in one of these two categories somewhere?
Yeah, so the Mayavadi philosopher is not necessarily a pretender. They are very situated in their way, but they are pretending. Krishna used the word Nitya, right, in the beginning of the 3rd chapter. I assume that's where you guys are reading. And they're, what speaks about one who makes a false show of renunciation. So I am renouncing the world externally, but I still have attachment to all my material desires. Now Srila Prabhupada comments that the Mayavadi philosophers, they tend to be pretenders because their philosophy is so dry and unattractive to themselves, they have no choice but to find some engagement in material matters. So externally, they show themselves as, orange saffron wearing renunciates. But in their heart, they are meditating on, food, drugs, sex life, all these different activities. So they are pretenders. But the concept of pretender is more broad than just that, right? So a pretender is anyone who is showing renunciation, but internally hankering for all those things that they're so-called are renouncing. So that's a pretender. It's more broader, than just the Mayavadi sannyasis. Now there may be Mayavadi sannyasis who actually have no material attachments and they have renounced, so they may not be a pretender, but they're still a big offender, but they may not be a pretender. So that's the understanding of the pretender kind of concept. It's a false show of renunciation.
Yeah, I got it now. Thank you so much. So basically, the false pretender, he might act like a Mayavadi, right? But he may not do so. And same goes to the one who is actually Mayavadi. He may act that the other way around, but he need not be. So it's more of a broader that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Alright, thank you, Prabhuji. That clarifies a lot because we were coming across that some words here and came across there, and so I think I got confused when they were talking pretender. Is it the same exactly?
Yeah.
Or it's different? Thank you. That clarifies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, wonderful. Great.
Nitya Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for So I have a question on inner service Prabhuji. Sometimes, as you said, in the early stage of the process of bhakti, we consider that every time service is sacred. But as the time passes, what happens like we think doing menial service which leads to pride in us. Like in the devotee circle, doing menial service is considered as highest
That is a pretender.
Yes, pretender. But now it is like if you go to temple, if you do menial service, people recognize it and hey, you are doing menial service. Is there anything like menial or great service, Prabhu?
What do you mean? Is there? Yeah. There's an easy solution to that consciousness right there.
Okay.
You do it when nobody is looking. That is always the character of service. The character of anyone is the test of anyone's character is what they do when no one's looking. Right? That's when the true nature comes out. That's a general concept, not a spiritual concept. The test of character is what one does when no one's looking. Of course, Krishna's always looking at us, but if we feel that is a potential for us, then and we should, we should do our service in a way that when no one's looking, when no one's around, and we can gauge ourselves. Am I as enthusiastic doing it when everyone's around or when no one's around? Right? It's a good gauge for us. On a relative level, of course, there's menial service and not. On an absolute basis, they're all pleasing to Krishna. There's no higher or lower in the pleasure to Krishna. The only higher or lower is what's the purity of the heart. Right? So, but for our conditioning, as you said, sometimes we gravitate to menial services because it makes us look humble. Right? So if that is our tendency, then we should take to our menial services out in private. And there are many ways to do that. But it's a good point if that is one of our challenges, right? We all have unique challenges. We all have unique circumstances that press our buttons. And so if we're truly introspective, as you're being right now, and not being, rosy-colored glasses, but you're being truly honest, then you'll find those, and then there's always a solution to it. Take to that menial service, and out of the purview. And many devotees do that. And our job, when we do service and there's any pride, it means we don't understand that we are lame and dumb. We are truly, unequivocally lame, meaning we cannot move, and we are dumb, at least speaking for myself. But by Krishna's mercy, something can happen. But then when it happens, I did it. When it doesn't happen, Krishna, why you didn't make it happen? That is our mood. But the reality is very clear. We have no ability without the sanction of Krishna.
Very well said.
So, and how to develop this mood? Chant sincerely. Chant sincerely. Chant sincerely. Because this is the actual nature of the soul. This is not something artificial. This is the nature of the soul, is to be a humble servant to Krishna. So if it's not our nature today, make it our nature by good chanting.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Actually, Prabhuji, this is a very, very nice question. Thank you so much, Advocate Prabhuji, for asking that question. Honest to myself, I'm not able to do that, Prabhuji. This is just has banged on the target for me, this question.
Yeah. And that's why we have to be introspective.
Like when nobody's looking at yeah, exactly. This is very, very true. Very true for me. Very true. So you were saying only chanting?
No, I was
Anything else?
yeah, but and practically take to the process of rendering this service, and put ourselves in a position not to receive the whatever it is that we're looking for. Do service in a way when no one's looking, when no one's there. There's so many opportunities practically to do that. And that taste for the service actually will grow exponentially. The rasa from that service, when you render it that way, grows so much. And ultimately, we should not be shy to render service in front of others either, because that is only our inability. So we should develop the ability to do it also in front of anyone without being proud, without developing this mood of I am the doer. So, but to develop it, begin rendering very practical service, and do so in a way that's, quote unquote, behind closed doors. And if you see, I'll stop there. But just there is a practical way to do it, and again, by good chanting, this desire and ability will manifest.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a nice, thought-provoking discussion. Any other questions or comments? If you want.
So one question, when someone is in the practice of Krishna consciousness, over time they may experience some negative feelings, or they may see something that's negative, or something that may not necessarily be outwardly Krishna consciousness, and they may feel like bad about it, or they might feel some negativity towards spiritual life or Krishna consciousness. So how to kind of overcome that? Not always trying, I know we have to try to find the good in everyone, but sometimes we see things or we hear things, or someone might say something to us, and we're just astonished, like, how can this happen in a devotee community, or in a certain setting, or in spiritual life? How do we overcome that?
Yeah, so you asked a couple of different questions, different ways, so let me try a couple, and then you can tell me if I answered it. But see, when we experience ups and downs in devotional service, immediately it's a sign that we have to fix something. Just like if you're driving the car, you have the gas steady, and the car is accelerating and decelerating, we know there's something wrong in the engine. The connection between the gas pedal and the pistons that are firing something's afoot. So similarly, whenever we have this, we know we have to fix something. So let's do some introspection and figure out. When we experience, that mood of, that service, I just didn't have as much fun, it wasn't as blissful. Well, humility is always the main solver of most things. If you can see, and what is disappointment? It is the difference. If you think about a graph, I'm going this way, I don't know if it's going to. The disappointment is the difference between expectation and reality. That space is disappointment. If my expectation meets reality, I have no disappointment, right? By definition, mathematically. Now, if my expectation is tunadapi sunichena torodapi shirishna mani namanade nakirtanya sadhavi, my expectation is always here. So no matter where the result is, there is no disappointment. But as soon as I have expectation for something, some glorification, some experience, some reciprocation, there will be potential for disappointment, because that gap will be there. But if my expectation is always humble, amani namanadena, no respect, no desire, then there's no scope for disappointment. And actually, when one renders service that way, one experiences this bliss that's beyond comprehension. So, humility solves most issues, most problems, because we have a need for things that aren't related to pleasing Krishna. I want so-and-so to think about me in this way. I want this person to acknowledge what I did for them. I'm doing this service better than that person, yet they are getting more, recognition or more opportunity or whatever. But we always forget one thing. Krishna is the supreme knower, and he knows actually what happened. Then why do we stress about anyone else? Krishna knows. Guru knows. Then what is the worry? You don't have to worry what somebody may think about or how they may misinterpret my actions. They may think this. What's the worry? Krishna knows. Guru knows. He is the perfect knower. So we always can take comfort in that position. That's point 2. Point 3 is, as soon as we have expectations that everyone is perfect in devotional service, it means that we think we're perfect. Whatever imperfections we see are simply a mirror. They're a reflection of our own heart. Actually, the imperfections we see in others is reflective of what resides within us. This person has ego. This person has this person has that. Just change that to I, and you'll be safe. So be grateful that there are imperfections, because it is a means to perfect ourselves. And understand that if something is not going so perfectly, it should be a warning to us that devotional service must be taken seriously. Maya is difficult. And it should inspire a mood of compassion and prayer. Then let this person also become purified from whatever it is they may or may not be doing. So, having this expectation of perfection, Kala Krishna Das, left the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and went with the gypsies. If it happened at that level, of course it's going to happen here too. So, 3 things. We should have no expectation. If we are humble, no matter where the result is, there is no differential. But as soon as the expectation doesn't meet result, that gap is disappointment. Right? 2, that whatever imperfections we see, they're simply a reflection of our own hearts. That should be our consciousness. And so when we see them, okay, how do I rid myself of this? How do I work on that? And what's the means to work on all of it? Chanting, chanting, chanting. And being honest with ourselves. I really appreciate the honest reflections we've had in this discussion itself. That's real and potent. And when we are honest with ourselves, then we can make real progress. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
What if we, you can ask Madhuri after this. No, go ahead, Madhuri.
Hare Krishna Guru. Actually, coming to Paul's ego, what I understand is that if doing any work, if I think like I did this work, or I did this, so something like that, this Paul's ego. So if I want, while I'm praying to Krishna, Krishna. Krishna bless me to improve my chanting. So I want to improve my chanting. So is that all coming under false ego?
No, because your want to improve your chanting is for the goal of improving your service to Krishna. So if you want to improve your chanting is so that I can show others that I'm chanting more, then yes, that would be. But if your want to improve your chanting is so that you can more purely serve Krishna for his pleasure, because remember, the more pure our heart is, the more pleasure Krishna gets from our service. So the goal for purifying our heart is so that we may render service more purely to Krishna. Not so that we can now have a badge on our chest that yes, I'm a pure devotee. But no, so that Krishna will become more pleased with our service. So the mood, the devotee wants to become free of envy and free of pride and attached to chanting. Because the devotee knows that the only way I can give pleasure to Krishna is by serving him. And when one serves that way, one experiences such supreme transcendental bliss. It's unimaginable. It's so, the pure devotee, the bliss of pure devotional service is like an ocean. And the happiness of this whole material world is compared to the amount of water in the hoof print, not of a cow, but of a calf. But it takes that mood. And that's the great system. The less we try to enjoy ourselves, the more we actually enjoy. So praying to be able to serve Krishna, praying to be free of these is the best of prayers. Right? Prahlad Maharaj prayed to Nrsimhadev, I beg you to not ever make me tempted to take a material benediction from you. So these are very sweet prayers because the motive is to serve Krishna nicely. Serve Krishna purely. Without any... Is that okay, Mata? Did I answer your question?
Yes, Prabhuji. Actually, whenever I'm praying to Krishna, that if I'm using the word I, so I really...
I is okay as long as it's I in service of Krishna.
Okay.
I is always okay if it, because when we say desireless, it means not no desires. As soon as we are active, there are desires. So, oh Krishna, I want to serve you. Oh Krishna, I want to appreciate your glories. Oh Krishna, I want. So I is okay as long as it's connected to serving Krishna. Because that's who I am. Ego is not bad. False ego is bad. Ego means I am. I am servant of Krishna. So I is not bad. I, when it's disconnected to Krishna, is when it's bad. Make sense? Thank you. Yeah. All right, nice question, detailed question. Thank you. Palika Mataji, you had a question? Or a comment?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Guruji. Like you said, the disappointment is something as a big gap between the expectation and reality. So now you're saying that we should not have the expectation, that is the objective, and so then that will meet a reality, and then obviously there will be no disappointment. But if we do not have any expectation at all, then there is no something that you have to strive to reach a particular goal, whether it could be in corporate field or anything, right? Even we have an expectation that the kids are going to do some basic things, and these are to be done for this particular day, right? So there has to be a certain level of expectation for some basic kind of thing to be met. Or am I wrong in expecting that?
Yeah, so what we want is, you're not wrong in expecting that. What we want to do is redirect what is our motive, right? So our motive in service should be that Krishna has given me a very able body, mind, and intelligence. Where it came from? His Apara Shakti. He is giving me these facilities. I, as part of his Para Shakti, spirit soul, am his eternal servant. So my expectation, if you want to use that, is to use my facilities that I've been given by Krishna for his service. And my motivation to do the utmost and ultimate service is I don't want to waste the gift that Krishna has given me. Because I care so much about my Supreme Lord and everything he has done for me. So I will use everything in my ability and power to do. But what results from that work, what results from that service, I have no expectation of. So it doesn't mean that, okay, because I have no expectation, so materially, if I have no expectation, I just do it haphazardly. Right? I don't care. If I have no expectation of how to write some software, I just put some, I don't care. But that's material logic. Spiritual logic is, whatever energy I have that's been given to me by Krishna, I want to try to use it as best to please Krishna. Again, there's I. I want to use it as best to please Krishna. But I know I can't really do anything. It is all based on Krishna's mercy. So I don't have any expectation of it working, but I'm going to try because that's my position. And so Krishna makes me brokenhearted by being present before me, or if he handles me roughly by his embrace. He is my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. And that is Krishna Prema. That is the 8th verse of Shikshashtakam prayers. Right? So the devotee doesn't need the result as the source of inspiration to serve. It's the opportunity to serve and the utilization of every ability Krishna has given to the fullest, which motivates. And that type of service is so pleasing. And the benefit is, it's pleasing always. So when we do something and it's a colossal failure, it's easy. Krishna, that's your problem, not mine. I did everything I could. How liberating is that? And then when something goes great, Krishna, you did it. All right, that's what you wanted, great. Thank you for letting me participate. I'll be at you tomorrow. It's the ultimate liberating consciousness. We do the best we can. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, equally great. Krishna's given me a gift. Let me try to serve. And when we serve that way, then actually the rasa from service comes. The taste from this service comes. When we start to detach from that result. And that's what the expectation is I want something specific to happen. The only thing we should have is an expectation of ourselves that we give 110% effort. Did I try my best? Like Balabhadra Bhattacharya. He did everything he could to serve Krishna. But if one day grains didn't come, he was not going to lament. He tried everything he could. Right? If one day he finds great spinach shop that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu loves, he's going to think, wow, Krishna arranged it. And that's what, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu glorifies his service, what does he say? I'm a lame man. I'm a dumb man. But you have given me the mercy. Right? So this expectation should just be do 110%, not on the result. And let the service be the source of our happiness, not the result. Let the service be our happiness, not that result. Not what somebody else says about our service, not what somebody else acknowledges or doesn't acknowledge. If that gives us happiness or distress, we're in a wrong spot of consciousness. So simply look to that internal motivation to use the gifts of Krishna to serve 110%. And whatever happens, happens. And then one will be, and that's why I said earlier, Whenever there is ups and downs, it's just an indication. We have to make a couple tweaks in our consciousness. Just make a couple of adjustments. It is a good indicator. Like on the dashboard of a car, there's lights that pop up when something's not working right, though we don't see it not working right. Our indicator, we have to make a couple of tweaks, is whenever we have this.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So basically, there's a downside, down in life, then we just have to analyze and see, am I putting my 10% in it? Number one. Next is it that my lack of faith in Krishna, that I don't know that, Krishna is the best Krishna, and we are thinking that we are on our plan to work. So if we have complete faith that he knows best, so why do we need to worry since we have already put in 110% in the first place?
Perfect. If you speak to yourself that way every time, it's perfect. No, it's perfect. You've understood it perfectly. And don't expect to be perfect though. It's going to take some time. But take that logic each time it happens and talk ourselves back to bliss. Right? So how you explain is perfect. It's Krishna's plan. If he wanted it to work, it was going to work. And if he didn't, it wasn't. And just be disciplined on the other side. When something great happens, remember who did it. You have to, if we carry both sides equally, then one can remain humble and render service. Look at Srila Prabhupada. His life is a living example of this principle. Whether results were coming or not, he was equally enthusiastic and determined. That's why I wanted to read that purport from 145. I love reading Srila Prabhupada. It just melts my heart to hear him speak about the success of ISKCON because it's on the backs of so much struggle. And to me, it's just very sweet. And he writes in that purport, how the Western devotees were taking to the chanting of the holy names. And it's so beautiful. But Prabhupada was so humble, even when there were thousands of followers and they were carrying him in a palanquin around the streets of Surat, and they had lined the streets, and just extraordinary. Krishna's adored. But when he was lying alone from heat stroke in Delhi, passing out back to Godhead, and literally fainted in the ditch by himself, equally enthusiastic. So let's carry both sides of it, success and failure. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, the devotee is equanimity in both success and failure. Okay?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you all. I'm sorry I took up so much of your time today, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to discuss in this way, and anything I can do. Thank you for the opportunity to read Chaitanya Caritamrita with all of you. It is these parts are so sweet and so blissful. It's such an exquisite scripture. So thank you. Very grateful to all of you. Please forgive me if I misspoke anything or mischaracterized anything. It's only due to my impurities and inefficiencies. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vrindavan ki jai. Hare Krishna.